Okay. All right. Looks like we are live and good to go. So we have on our panel, we have Michael Lopez and John McCall. He was on last week on our transitioning tech in life. And so I want to welcome everybody here to our the impact of artificial intelligence in society and how it's really changing. And I think it's actually kind of funny because I listened to Sam Altman on Joe Rogan just this past week, and it was ironic that it was a good timing of hearing one of the co-founders of OpenAI and how he talked about he didn't even think that AI was going to be where it was. If you asked him 5 years ago when they built and really OpenAI was just a project to them. And now it's turned into a multi-billion-dollar industry for them. And it's across the board with all these major companies, Microsoft, Google, and them using their technology. And even right now, even Dolly 3 just came out and people were posting. I think that was you, Michael, wasn't it? That had something, I believe, that used Dolly 3, and it was just the art that you had was amazing. So it's something that we have to embrace as a society. And I think some people are very scared of that. But in any terms, like when I remember jumping on a computer in 1996, my freshman year in high school, I had a compact Packard Bell 233 megahertz, probably I'd say, I forget how many megabytes, but it was just something slow. And now look where we're at moving into the future. And so that's what I really want to talk about in this discussion here is really where we are heading. So I have the two panel members. We're going to go and introduce themselves. John, if you want to go ahead and go first.
Yeah, hey everybody out there. Thanks for joining us. My name is John McConnell. I'm a retired CW3 out of the U.S. Army. Did 25 years, active duty and reserve time both. I run a podcast called Retire.Army Podcast where we talk about retirement, transition, things like that. Guests from all walks of life in the military, whether they're Navy, Army, Marines, Air Force, Space Force, doesn't matter. And today, my background, I have a stack of SANS certs along with a bunch of other different certifications. So I don't list them all in my titles anymore, but I do carry a few of those credentials. And again, the background of IT, and I did do about a year deep dive personally on AI stuff and AI tech, building things out with AI tech. So hopefully I can bring some value to the discussion.
Okay, I'm going to bring on Michael, and you go ahead and introduce yourself and also just explain what you did in the military before and then what you're doing now civilian-wise at Augusta and doing great things for cybersecurity. I'm going to go ahead and put the...
Yeah, so hello, I'm Michael Lopez. I'm currently a principal cybersecurity engineer. I actually got my start working in cybersecurity doing electronic warfare for the Navy, which was pretty fun stuff. Can't talk too much about that, though. I actually, both as a 17 Charlie enlisted and as a contractor afterwards, I worked with the U.S. Army Cyber Command and the NSA, doing somewhat threat intelligence type stuff. And then I actually moved to the opposite realm of that and started working for a Silicon Valley startup for a couple of years. And now I work within the healthcare industry. I've done quite a bit of research on AI myself. I've given some conference talks and presentations regards to some of my research with regards to AI within the context of cybersecurity, and looking at hopefully releasing some white papers soon pending legal review with regards to a lot of the cool stuff that I've discovered in research.
Okay. No, and that's why that's why I reached out to you, because I saw a lot of your posts that you were posting about AI. And so it really triggered me to be able to say, hey, let me reach out to you and see what you can be able to contribute to our talking points. So we're going to have a few talking points. We're going to cover kind of a array of information when it comes to AI, whether it's education, the impact of what it can do for cybersecurity. So it's going to kind of be a mixture, but what I want to be able to do is just with our board members and how we want to be able to kind of present based on how this is going to change the future of what we're currently doing. And a lot of people on my Facebook, made comments about my full self-driving on my Tesla. And it's like, well, it's unfortunately it's where we're at, and we just have to be able to I wouldn't necessarily say regulate the technology. I think it will come down to it. It will have to be regulated in terms of from a government standpoint, but I think that as long as we can utilize it to our best of our abilities without causing concerns. And of course, we are going to have adversaries that are going to use it against us, and that's I think what scares people the most. Whether it's Russia, China, whoever, but that's where we just have to understand from the cybersecurity perspective of where those injects and what those vulnerabilities will actually look like. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide here. All right, so the question is how is AI automation affecting the job market, and what strategies can be employed to mitigate potential job displacement? And so I'll open up the discussion first, and then we'll go to Michael and John. But for me, and as I was talking to Michael, is that one of the things that I know, when it comes to software development, is that ChatGPT, GitHub, Copilot is there as pretty much a boilerplate. There's no reason when a programmer, so as a project manager on a software development project right now, a production or a prototype to production that we're creating, he tried to run through me saying that it was going to take him 12 to 15 hours to create an API dev environment, which I rebutted that. And I said, there's no need for you to take 12 hours to create this when all we're needing is some type of testing environment to create an API for a JSON file to come print on the front of the screen of a .NET app. And that's why I said, you should be able to build this within 8 hours, not even, probably 4 hours. And I said, use AI to your advantage to create your boilerplate code, so you're not having a line by line code, and there's no need anymore. And so that was one of the things I think when ChatGPT came out, what people were afraid of was that it was going to take software development jobs, whatever the case may be, which isn't the case. I think what it's doing for software developers and the ones that I interact on Upwork as a freelance project manager is it gives them the capability to be able to streamline their work. And so that's where I kind of feel with this question here is that I don't think it's taking away jobs. I think it's that it's enabling people to be more proficient at their jobs, and it gives them the tools that they need in order to be able to put the thought process through. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the stage to Mike, and then I will jump off stage. And Mike, if you kind of want to talk through this one here, and then me and John.
Sure. I think that a lot of that is very true, that in the end, it's meant to enable and further the productivity of everyone. And that's where it's going to be for a long time. I do worry about some companies in the short term making very short-sighted decisions, especially with regards to junior level positions. Those initial entry-level positions in the marketplace are that are knowledge-based still are a lot easier to automate with the advent of AI. And I worry that it could lead to circumstances where short-term profit-seeking motives override the opportunity to build good developers, for example, and they just kind of outsource that sort of labor to these AI systems, causing a bit of a glut on the entry-level side with regards to the job market and with regards to just being able to get more people into the field.
Yeah, and I could see that. I could see that now with AI, it's not enabling entry level people to be able to have the baseline skill sets, and it's kind of a cheat code more or less to be able to kind of create a product or software, with ease. And I kind of can see that. And then at the same time though, too, a lot of the times that you see on Upwork or Fiverr is very cheap labor. Pakistan, India programmers that provide some type of simplistic application at a very low cost. And so you kind of take away the quality versus quantity kind of mindset on software development now that you have that. A lot of companies, unfortunately, they outsource to those and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot of shortcomings when it comes to people that do go out and buy, outsource it to that company. They don't understand the continuous integration when it comes to an application. But when it comes to the automation and the AI side of the house, you are taking away the skill sets. And that's what I'm wondering now, like how Code Academy and all these other Code Ninja schools are teaching if they're implementing AI into their curriculum so that way it gives them advantages, but at the same time, are they still learning the basic variables and all the other basic type of algorithms that they need to know when it comes to coding? So, but well, I'll go ahead and bring on John. I appreciate, Michael, your comments there, and we'll go to John on his comments on this slide.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me preface everything with saying this. One of my favorite people in the world, Gary Vaynerchuk, he's probably said it a few times in the last several months about AI, because it's a big discussion across all industries, right? Not just IT, but across everywhere. Where you're talking about fashion design, or you're talking about any other thing that you're doing in the world. And he basically equated it to when the tractor was built and created back in the day, right? And farmers before that were using just hand machines and using animals to pull the different machines to plow the fields, to do the farming. And then all of a sudden the tractor comes along. I'm sure there was probably the same kind of sentiment. Like, some people were like, oh no, the tractor's here and now we're all going to lose our jobs and farming's going to go away. And it really, what it does is it actually augments. It's like adding electricity to an analog machine, right? It's going to be to the point where it's commoditized. It isn't there yet, but it's just basically enhancing. And I think that's what it does with humans, say coders, for example. I've used it myself to do coding things, and you hear from the coding purists, and they're like, you shouldn't use AI because you're copying somebody's code. I'm like, well, that's some of the things that we do anyways when we code. Like, we don't all just sit down and come up with code. We use boilerplates, we use things like that. So I think it's really just an augmentation. Taking away jobs, I think, is really a kind of glass half empty view of it. Like, really, it's more of not so much will this take away my job, but how do I leverage AI in order to position myself for when the job market shifts, so that I'm the expert at controlling the AI as an augmented piece of my workflow in order to do a similar job or an even better job, right? That's my perspective and my take on.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that we just have to be able to really just leverage the technology into our advantage. And I mean that's really where it comes down to, is matter of a balance. I think it's going to be have to be a fair balance between how do we utilize AI, certainly in a situation like this. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next question here, which is going to be, how can we address and rectify the bias present in algorithms and data to ensure fairness and equity? And so one of the situations I think was relevant to this was when ChatGPT did come out. If you say something good about Donald Trump, minus whatever your political views may be, but it was ironic that when you type something that said something about Donald Trump versus say something good about Joe Biden, it would come out and it would say uh, something good about Joe Biden, and then it wouldn't even respond back to Donald Trump, and that's that bias there. And how do we fix that, or how do we monitor that in order for make sure that AI is fair and balanced when it comes to how the data sets print out the information? So I'm going to give Mike the stage, and you can kind of.
Yeah, I think this is a really hard problem from a technical perspective, because really it involves getting a robust data set encompassing a wide variety of opinions on any given subject matter. The problem is that there's so many subject matters, and there's so many new subject matters at any given point in time, that it's really hard to encompass every single aspect. It's not an unsolvable problem entirely, but it is difficult being able to aggregate a wide view of opinions, um, especially opinions that may be in the minority. And there's opinions that are in the minority, and there's opinions that maybe are in the minority on the internet as opposed to in everyday life. It's very difficult to find a wide range of viewpoints for that data. But then, with the way AI works, it's also very hard to have that as an output, because AI tends to be an average, an aggregate of all the things it's learned. So it's not a easily solvable problem, but I think it starts with ensuring that we have a robust data set encompassing a variety of viewpoints and opinions. And that in of itself is also a very hard problem.
Yeah, and I could see that. I could see that it really, because everything is so new right now. And how do you ultimately, like you said, how do you aggregate the data to make it fair and balanced to where it's not lopsided, and whether it's a political or social view that you may have, that it doesn't skew the information that you're getting. And I think that's where it's going to take some time to understand, to really absorb what data that is coming in through it, and then how it's presented in front. And that's where it's just, yeah, it's a hard one to kind of to tackle. So I'll bring on John, and like I said, we'll see what his opinion is, and I'll take you off stage, Mike. All right, stage is yours, John. And
Yeah, I agree with Michael. It's a very, very difficult problem to solve. I mean, we as humans trying to parse through data alone right now, we don't know what's the truth, what's not the truth. So just that aspect of it. And then if you start to throw in things like cultural differences, cultural norms and values, different ways that people view different things in different parts of the world, like there's all those things to take in consideration. And I think really at the end of the day, yes, we need to have more data sets and data points. Maybe we need to be able to vet those data sets and data points and validate them to the point of 99.999 accuracy, and then also getting just better at the algorithm parsing the data, no matter if it's a large data set or a small data set. Because again, as Michael said, it takes an aggregate of the information, then and it gives you its best guess based on that aggregate. So it's not like 100% like this is the truth answer, but it does take a lot of pieces of information and it kind of melds them together. That's why you get things like the AI kind of going off into la la land when it's giving you answers, even in Chat GPT and things like that. It has this kind of like daydreamy answer that it gives you because of those reasons. So yeah, more data, being able to validate the data and to validate it to the point of truthiness, and then also just getting better at validating data, even on a smaller scale.
yeah. Yeah, we have a couple comments in the section right now on LinkedIn. You can hire and encourage minorities in AI to incorporate the recommendations and adjust the data sets. And then also Michael, he says that I think it's extremely difficult, as that this is a problem in human intelligence, much less AI. So, I think that's where really, because at the end of the day, it's going to be humans that are feeding this machine until a point where it becomes, it becomes I can't even think of the term right now, where we're almost at the point of Terminator, and where everything is sentient. That's what happened. That's what happened with the Google guy. I think he got fired because he was saying that whatever algorithm, that whatever AI system that Google was using, that it was starting to become sentient. So I don't know, and I mean, it's very interesting to see where we're heading in, as far as like the technology that is currently present. And but we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide here. All right. Okay. So this one here is, what are the privacy implications of AI systems that collect and analyze a vast amount of personal data, and how can individuals maintain control over their data? And so really this comes down to whether it's HIPAA, PI, whatever the case may be, and how do we pretty much keep it secure in terms of where we currently are at right now. And in case in point, like my parents, they were victims of the Experian data breach. So, the thing is that we all know in cybersecurity, a lot of major companies don't like to invest in cybersecurity until it's already too late, and where there's already an inject or some type of man in the middle attack where they were able to extract data information. And I think it was you, Mike, that actually pointed out about the 23andMe. That's crazy. That's insane that, data at that level, at your biological genetic level, can be infiltrated. So I'm just kind of curious what from a cybersecurity standpoint, how can this data, and we'll move on to the next question that kind of follows on, but get your opinion on this here, Mike.
In regards to data that's already out there that you've put yourself on the internet or anything like that, the cat's out of the bag. The AI is already trained on that data set. And there's unfortunately no recourse about that currently. In terms of training on or the privacy of these AI systems that collect these huge amounts of data, there needs to be some sort of I hope that there's some sort of legal precedent in order to stop like HIPAA or PII to be trained on for AIs. Uh, Currently, as far as I'm aware, there's no legal precedent for that yet. However, companies are abiding by ethical principles for the most part with regards to training on these private data sets. That being said, it doesn't take much for a bad actor, or not even a bad actor, but maybe someone who's a little less scrupulous, to just start using and incorporating that data. And the way that these AIs work at aggregating data, it could very easily be accidentally contributed to the systems without us realizing it. So it's important to maintain the best practice for securing your own personal and private data, and making sure that you keep high standards with what you're giving out there into the world, because all of that will be used to train AIs.
Yeah, and I can see that. It's what you put out, and it's actually pretty funny because I got called out at a G6 summit because I created this Ask Chief, and all it was just ChatGPT. I was OpenAI's API key as a developer, and what I did was just before ChatGPT even had a mobile app for Apple and Google, I created this platform on both stores, and like I said, all it was just taking. It was just harvesting either what is it? There's two versions. There was a different version that I was using for the API for OpenAI, but pretty much it was DaVinci. And then I moved on to actual ChatGPT's current construct on their current platform on the website. And someone called me out at a conference. I forgot who it was, and they said that I was giving out information to adversaries because they were able to use the app on their mobile app. And so I freaked out and I backed out and I took it down, and then I had the senior CW5 at DISA tell me to put it back up because you're not doing anything wrong. All you're doing is you have a front end interface that's pretty much talking to ChatGPT, that information is already there. So it's not like I'm injecting information, because even if you tested it on my app, if you asked, hey, what is the hashing algorithm of a KG175 Delta, it wouldn't tell you because it doesn't have that information. So I kind of freaked out a little bit, but like I said, and it comes to any data sets that are out there, like I said, it's what you have to put in. And so this guy thought that I was pretty much putting out this information that he was able to search for, but all you had to do is do the same thing in Google, and you can get the COM 201 radio wattage or whatever the case may be, or whatever the distance is for a COM 201, and that's what he was complaining about. So when it comes to in this situation here, it's just like I said, it's what we feed into the database is what's going to be propagated out. So I'll give John the stage here. Let me get myself in.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? We kind of touched on it a little bit, but really just if you think about it, when our adversaries have access to the same kind of information we have access to, and we are so hesitant to then try to utilize and try to harness those tools and that AI tool that we have to use, and everybody freaks out about it. Like, AI is just trained on data that's already publicly available up till mid 2021. I don't think they've updated it since then yet, at least ChatGPT. But think about what the Chinese AI looks like, right? Think about how much more data that they have poured into their system and what is accessible on their end based off of what information they have available and how much they feed into it, right? So I think if we don't actually use the tech and try it out and try to figure out how it works and figure out some of these data leaky kind of situations, we're never going to know, and until it actually happens, and then you get into that kind of you're chasing your tail situation where you're more reactive than you are proactive. So I think actively making apps like the one you made, I made one like that for Stoic philosophy, and again, it's just literally taking the data that's already out there and you're just creating an interface for it. So that's I mean, that's where we are with AI right now. Really, it's just putting interfaces on the data set and the tool that's already available. That's been there for a while.
Yep. Yeah, and then we had a comment here. So ChatGPT is updated to January 2020 now, but I think they included the browser with Bing. So Bing, yeah, Bing, of course, Microsoft bought that huge contract, and then they also commented Barb is also able to connect to the internet and craft answers for the current internet data. So all it is, it's just scouring the internet and it's scouring the data that's available, that's open source information. And so it's just a matter of what information is being put into these data sets or into whatever browsers that you have. That information most likely is going to be available. But we'll go ahead and go to the next slide here. All right. So how can AI be leveraged for cybersecurity to detect and mitigate threats? And what are the risks associated with AI and cybersecurity? So I think this is going to be a good one here as far as, what tools that we currently have right now in place, whether it's Security Onion, it's Elastic. How is AI going to be able to be utilized at offensive and defensive posture when it comes to cybersecurity? So I'm going to give the stage to Mike here, and this is going to be probably your baby here, but let me go ahead and.
Yeah, so this is something I've done extensive research on. The bad news is that as far as offensive capabilities, they far outstrip currently. The offensive capabilities far outstrip the defensive capabilities. A lot of the defensive capabilities are still being worked on and require a lot more development and integration with tool-specific items. Unfortunately, the offensive capabilities already exist out there. You already have these tools that leverage AI in order to have do social engineering or anything malicious in regards to cyber threats. Some of the research that I've worked on directly was essentially the fact that you can take something as simple as a CVE description and within 10 minutes have full working exploit code, brand new POC for a vulnerability that was just released as a CVE. That capability isn't like something far off in the future. It's something that exists here and now, and it makes it so that unsophisticated actors like script kiddies or even people who just kind of have a vendetta could easily infiltrate systems with brand new vulnerabilities. I think that it eventually starts to look like that you have blue team AI doing the same thing, creating these vulnerabilities using things like CVE descriptions, but then also dynamically creating mitigation strategies for them. When you integrate that capability into like your SIM for alerting, that's going to be tremendous. However, until that exists, it's going to be an uphill battle. And I feel like the industry tends to be more reactive than proactive, as they were saying earlier. And so it'll be a bit before we see something fully integrated like that. As of now, it is, if you're doing offensive operations or red team or you're some sort of APT, it is a field day with regards to AI.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, I think where we have to be able to understand. And you made a good point about the script kiddies, and it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because I had a guy at my office asking me how he can get into. Well, every time when someone says cybersecurity, they want to get into cybersecurity field, and I asked him, like, well, what do you want to do? Ethical? You want to do offensive, defensive? And I said, honestly, he wanted to get into pen testing, and I said, well, I think your ultimate goal would be OSCP. That's the pinnacle of pen testing certification. I mean, it's not easy. It's a 24-hour test, but get into understanding Kali Linux, get a Raspberry Pi, and do some injects into like a meta exploit into your local environment, whether through wireless or through LAN. And so it just gives the opportunity now with AI to, pretty much like you said, is they could probably be able to create some type of injects and vulnerability that can disrupt the network immediately. Whether it's denial of service or a DNS injects, whatever the case may be, I think it's so much easier now with AI associated with how you can be able to pretty much learn something without having to go through the motions of what I remember I used to play with Kali Linux and GNS3 back in 2019 just to learn it, and now with ChatGPT, with AI, it's like you could be able to pick it up immediately now without even having to really pull out a manual and have to read line by line on a documentation. So I'm going to open it up to John here. We'll take myself and Mike off stage.
Yeah, I think it gets really interesting in the cybersecurity context when you can start building your own LLMs or large language models of the data that you take in, whether it's from a Splunk, like whatever data that you're pulling in, if it's network traffic, it's whatever, like being able to build out a large language model based off of that data set. And then again, it's not going to be 100% accurate. It's not, but you can actually get into the prompt engineering side of it. And I don't really know how much blue teams are even focusing on this technology. Again, it's like you have to use the technology, you have to put it at the forefront of what you're trying to do, at least part of the time you're spending doing this blue teaming or this preparation, in order to basically understand how this stuff works. And if the adversary is using it, you need to be using it as well, to the contrary of what they're using it for. So yeah, if they can harness those things and build out that data set quickly, and then turn around and use that data set to use it for monitoring tools or use it for analysis tools, like that really changes the tide of things pretty quickly. So yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to the next slide here. So this one, I wish my wife was on here because she's the director of operations for the state of Texas for the education side of the house. So how can AI enhance personalized learning experiences, and what are the potential challenges and concerns in implementing AI in education? And as I was talking to Mike on before we came online, that was one of the things that I mentioned, was that, as soon as ChatGPT came out last year, you started seeing colleges and universities disable the URL on campus internally, because of the plagiarism and everything else, that pretty much people were they weren't even doing their own thought process. And that's where I think there has to be a balance between students using AI, is use your own thought process, but use ChatGPT to clean up and I mean, even Grammarly now has that tool set, and where you can right click and you can do a AI generated, make this sound better, or make this more professional, or make this more confident. So it's a matter of how do we utilize AI in the education realm, from K-12 and up to higher education, and be able to pretty much provide that capability to the students without it being considered plagiarism or something that is considered unethical. So I'll open the stage to Mike, and let's go ahead.
I think a lot of this reminds me of the kind of age-old phenomenon with like calculators in school, right? Do we let children use calculators in school? And I think we finally gotten to yes. I do think AI will be intrinsically part of the school experience. Now, the education field is very slow to adjust, and it's going to take a long time, but inevitably it needs to be incorporated into education, because if these are the tools we're using in the industry, in the job place, they need to be part of this whole education environment. That being said, I also think there's another layer on top of that, which is that these AIs are great for personalized one-on-one teaching. Smaller classroom size are indicative of students' performance. So if you have individualized one-on-one learning with an AI teacher, that could dramatically improve the education across America and across the world. Having access to essentially an at-home tutor, free, available for anyone, regardless of income level, regardless of where you come from. Everyone having access to this is tremendous. On the downside, though, you run into the issue of hallucination. When the AI is confidently wrong and teaching someone about a subject matter they don't know, there's not really a good way of verifying that. So I think there's so much tremendous potential here, but we still have some hurdles to overcome. And even as it exists, I think it can still be tremendous for tutoring students, creating practice questions and everything. But there's some hurdles we still have to get over.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree, and it can kind of use like an analogy. If you don't practice on your golf swing and you keep doing the same thing over and over with your golf swing, you're just going to make bad habits that are going to get to the point where you just never improve. And it's just kind of muscle memory. And I think that's how AI, and I actually used ChatGPT and AI when I was doing my PMP study, because when it came to study hall and PMI, it really wasn't the question. When I got something wrong and the explanation of the answer was just not where I needed to be to learn the material, what I would do, I would go to ChatGPT, highlight, copy everything, put it over to ChatGPT and say, hey, please explain the answers and understand why I got it right and wrong, and then break down the question to answer. And it would literally break down based on whatever the framework of the project was on the question and to the actual question itself. And that's where I was able to learn a lot of the things that PMI was throwing at me during the PMP study. And so it does have its advantages and it does have its capabilities. But yeah, like you said, it really, there's a fine line of if that information actually is genuine, and how do you know, and how do you ensure that it is non-reputable information that's actually being spit out? Because otherwise then you're just learning something that's not even correct at all. Let's look at the comment right here. I'm gratified to see universities are allowing now ChatGPT, as long as you cite it in the footnotes. SANS and others are including AI in their syllabus and their school policy. We have to encourage students to use it responsible. And then they also make them aware of potential qualifications and also conduct further research. There was a good Wired article about ChatGPT, hallucination about Proust, especially when referencing the original French books, not the translations. And so that kind of like it pretty much circles back to Michael's point, is that making sure that the information that you're getting taught is genuine. So we'll go ahead and open it up to John here. Take me and
Yeah, it's really, really good points about the education part. And I think, again, it's a matter of getting ahead of the power curve. It's about being proactive versus being reactive. I mean, there's a huge opportunity right now for educational institutions, teachers across the gambit of grades and ages right now to sit down and realize, like, what do the jobs look like in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years? How can we take this tool that's in its infancy now and build upon this tool and create the building blocks and the foundations in order to leapfrog our students into the future of technology and jobs when the job market does shift. Excuse me. And one other point I'll bring up is to the comment that Michael made about creating personalized learning. Not only that, but I think there's an opportunity here to take these AIs and create a personalized tutor that can also be a personalized kind of mental, emotional things beyond the education that normal student teachers don't have that kind of relationship, or a student and a counselor doesn't have that kind of relationship. You can really get these things tuned into the point where, you teach it about you, you teach it about yourself, how you think, how you act, how you talk. And when you're asking it questions, for it to give you some logical responses and not so just jumping off the hinges responses to things, so that you can dial in your emotional, mental well-being as well.
yeah, and then that's to the point. I was actually thinking about that when I was doing the Chat GPT, one thing for kind of vets, what you could have is kind of like your personalized counselor, where you don't have to go to the vet center to get PTSD counseling. You could have someone as an AI that knows, and that's one of the things with DaVinci. You can be able to do a Q&A, but it's not as fluid of information, where it's like a conversation that you would have with ChatGPT versus the DaVinci Code. It was kind of a frequently asked questions style setup. And so it didn't really work out what I was trying to envision. But yeah, to your point, I think that would be something amazing to be able to have educational wise, but then also even with someone with PTSD or mental demons that they're facing, and be able to have someone to talk to, whether it's, like I said, it's just someone that's available 24/7 to them. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next one here. So what ethical principles should guide the development and deployment of AI, and how can we ensure these principles are upheld? So we really talked about kind of regulations, and I think that it is eventually going to happen where I think government regulations are going to have to come on board to mitigate issues where people are taking advantage of AI. And so kind of want to get your guys' opinion on what that looks like in the future. And I even know like Elon Musk has talked about it on Twitter about, or on X.com about, being able to regulate. And even Sam Altman even talked about it during the Joe Rogan podcast, was being able to regulate AI to the point where it's not locked down, but how do we shape based on the ethical violations that may come about, whether it's adversaries or even in, like I said, even in the educational world or even in any industry, law, healthcare. So I'll open up the stage. I'll take me and John off.
I mean, this is a complex, multifaceted question that teams of ethicists being paid absurd amounts of money across a variety of industries and these like AI startups are working very hard to figure out. There's so many considerations, but if I'll take a second to narrow in on something like likeness. There's a lot of tools out there that can mirror a person's likeness, and this is becoming increasingly accessible with deepfake technology. And there's a concern from places like the acting industry, which is on strike for these very things, about the ownership of likeness. I think that there will have to be laws in place for ownership of personal data, including likeness. And I think the framework from which we operate from in terms of considering what is us and what is reproducible by us is going to have to change. We need to have some sort of environment where you can operate at and understand what is real, what is AI. And we're still a long ways away from that, unfortunately. It's just, this is a difficult problem to figure out because it's such a multifaceted issue. And I think that while big companies are acting in the best interest for now, and trying to get these ethical guidelines and are abiding by their own ethical principles, inevitably bad actors are going to step in, or less scrupulous actors are going to step in and do things that need to be regulated. And that's not even to talk about all the strides that the open source communities are making with AI. And that poses its whole new plethora of questions, many of which I do not have the answer to.
No, that's perfect. And I mean, look at the Writers Guild strike that just happened, and it really was they're using character scan. It was not even the Writers Guild with with writing open AI, but it was also actors that are kind of BC class actors where they were pretty much scanning their body and then using them as a double prop in the back end of a scene without them even being present. So I think that was a monumental change when it came to pretty much property rights and intellectual property of person, to be able to say, hey, if you're going to use me as a prop in the back of a scene of a movie that's going to make money, how am I going to get paid? Or how's that fair for me to not get any value out of that if you're just using me after I say, one and done, and you scan my body and that's it? And it really comes down to, like I said, it just comes down to being able to say what is ethical and what is unethical. And I think, the case was, after all said and done, I'm sure Hollywood and the Writers Guild and everybody else kind of came to agreement that what they were doing was unethical. And so it really, and you see so many deep fakes, and it's like, okay, is this real or is it genuine? And even look at it after the assault on Israel that happened, you saw all these fake media, like made up situations that were happening, and you don't even know anymore. And you think about it decades ago with 9/11, you would have never seen that because it wasn't even a thing. And now you don't even know what's genuine. And you can see, when it comes to the deepfake videos that are being made, it's like, man, is this real or is this fake? And so it just comes down to how do we identify and how do we differentiate? And I think that we are coming to a point where we have to be able to like say, okay, this is fake or no, this is not. And people get canceled because of those situations based on whatever deepfake video that may come out about them. And then how do we authenticate that video or that voiceover? I just made a voiceover on one of my videos with, I have Speechify and I used Mr. Beast as my voiceover, and it sounds real. It actually sounds like it's him. And so it's just crazy that we have these tools available. We have a couple comments here. Let's go ahead and look at this one. It's difficult to define the ethical principles to include, because much of the base of culture, gender, and historical perspectives. And then he also implements that responsible AI teams from Microsoft and others are working hard on it. But unfortunately, we still have stories and experience of blatant bias in AI. And I think that's true. And actually, when he mentioned that, when you do someone posted it on LinkedIn, when you post a picture, say, make me look into a professional person, and it was a person of color, and it turned him into a white person with blue eyes. And so there goes your ethical. And that's the guy that goes to the point of AI right now is very biased when it comes to how it's being deployed out. And so we have another comment here, and then we'll move on to John's response. But is that even possible? Now that the genie is out of the bottle, there will always be unethical people and groups using the power of machine learning to find exploit weaknesses. Machines should be able to find weaknesses faster than we can identify them. We've been facing this even before AI. The ethical community will abide, but the dark side will always do what they want to do. And that almost brings back to the point, even when you think about the Second Amendment and gun rights, at the end of the day, she's right. We can do all the mitigation, we can do all the protection that we want from an offensive, perspective, and then also from a defensive perspective in cybersecurity. But at the end of the day, that people are going to be malicious no matter how you want to tag it. And I think they're going to find a way to be able to exploit data, whatever the case may be, personal data, information, credit card information, whatever. Even if it's just being able to exploit a person's identity and who they are. I mean, that's even the thing now, is like anything you do wrong online now, you get doxxed. And so it's just a matter of how do we, from what Ken wrote there, is that how do we go about that? And I'll pause before we move on to John, if y'all want to answer this question here and kind of get your thoughts on this.
I mean, like you said, the genie's out of the bottle. This is the case for everything. I mean, it's not like we exist within a new framework. There will always be people doing illegal, bad things, and we, as a community, need to find solutions to this. And it's not like every single thing with regards to people doing illegal things has been solved. I think this just becomes part of a broader conversation of how do we deal with bad actors within a variety of different fields. This is just unprecedented because of the scope and scale it exists at. You don't need individual action. You can do things at orders of magnitude as a single individual with AI. I think that's the main concern. You're multiplying magnitude. But as far as the ethical principles being exploited by people, man, that's intrinsic to the cybersecurity industry. That's intrinsic to the law enforcement industry. That's intrinsic to even going to the principles of warfare, which is a hot topic now because of everything that's been going on. There's not much you can do. You can say no, and you could have consequences, but enforcing those consequences is also a different story.
Yeah, John, you want to add on to this comment here and just kind of your talking points, and then we'll move on to your talking points for the slide.
Yeah, it's really, we're living in a Black Mirror kind of reality now. It's starting to pick up, and the technology is not going to slow down. That's the thing that I think everybody should walk away from this from, is any technology, whether it's this technology, blockchain technology, like whatever it happens to be, electricity, you're not going to slow it down. And it's only going to be more and more prevalent as we move further in time. But now in this day and age, it seems like, at least from my perspective, that we're not going by the Moore's law kind of curve anymore. Things are going exponentially faster as we progress along this technology, journey that we go on. So yeah, you really, at the end of the day, it's what is morally right for the goose should also be morally right for the gander, I guess, is my answer for that.
Yep. And we'll go ahead and move.
So yeah, then as far as the ethical principles, I mean, there's so much involved in this question. And I don't think we as humans, minus the technology, have even begun to start to unwrap and unravel and to solve this in a really good way. Like, you look what's going on right now in the Middle East, a direct example. Like, it really just needs to be a very human thing to solve for a very technological issue. But as far as things like proving validity of something, like was already discussed, what Michael brought up, it's the same kind of thing we do in the art world. It's the same kind of thing that started to happen with blockchain technologies, and I hope it continues. Not so much like the cryptocurrency thing and the black market, like Silk Road kind of thing, but more of creating this ledger of provenance for people, right? So based on your DNA, based on your your biometrics, based on your name, address, phone number, like those kind of things. We do it when we go through an airport. And I think to take it on a broader scale, we need to do it on a global level for all human beings, not just people flying who pay the extra fee every year for using Clear or whatever service they use. Like, you're proving you're creating provenance of human beings, basically, is what it boils down to, so that at the end of the day, you can prove the validity that, hey, that's me and that's my data and that's my face that you're using. And everybody else can see that, and we all come to an agreement on what's actually the truth and what's not the truth, because these deep fakes are going to continue to get better and better. As I mentioned, the technology is growing exponentially, not just on this linear curve anymore. So it's going to get faster and faster, and we're going to have to get faster as humans to keep up with it.
Yep. And then it brings another comment in the sections here on LinkedIn, is that you haven't even scratched the surface of what potentially is available on the dark web, like Worm GPT, Fraud GPT, or whatever else is lurking under the surface. And so we don't even know what's out there. And that's really what the scary part is like, how do we defend something that we don't even know that's even possibly is there? So we'll move on to the next slide here. And I think this may be this is going to be the last one here for the panel. Can AI truly be creative, and how is it being used in creative fields such as art, music, and literature? And I think, I just started messing around with Adobe's generation, and it's funny because I use Canvan for a lot of my products right here just for this presentation, and a lot of it I can just type out 5 words saying, hey, I want this to do this, this, and this, and it will just spit out. And then Microsoft Design, I don't know if you guys seen that. Microsoft Design that's a new platform that Microsoft is providing, where it's just AI based, and it pretty much creates the whatever you want. You could say, I want an Instagram post of this, this, and this. So it actually makes life a lot easier. Certainly if you're a social media content creator, you can create things so much faster now. So I want to get your opinion, Mike, on this, and then we'll move on to John.
Yeah, I mean, this is another tough question. Can AI truly be creative? I think that's something that everyone kind of has a different definition of what creativity means. Some people, it's already surpassed that. Some people, it has a long way to go. It's not something that I can answer for everyone, but everyone needs to kind of figure out for themselves what would qualify as being able to show creativity in AI. And that's something, it's more of a philosophical question than it is a technical question. And then as far as it being used in these creative fields, I think that we need to determine attribution. Does it belong to the AI? Does it belong to the prompt engineer? Does it belong to the people that it was trained on? Who owns AI-generated content? And that's something that we're just starting to have a conversation on. But, we've in classic innovation fashion, we've put the cart before the horse. This is a question we probably needed to have a long time ago, as opposed to now when these things are already out there and real. What qualifies as being owned? I know recently there was a court order or a judgment with regards to AI generated content generated purely by AI is not owned by anyone. And, those are there are consequences to that we have to come to terms with. But what about what I think a lot of people here would kind of agree with, which is that the coalescence of humans and AI coming together to create something, who owns that? It's a very interesting question about where that actually comes from and who actually owns it. But the applications are tremendous within the field, just being able to be used for so many different things and enhancing creativity and productivity in so many different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's where it really comes down to is as we there really was it was just kind of it happened. Dolly came out and people started playing with it, and then the API came out, and then an application where people were starting to make the 3D, remember the 3D pictures of themselves or dogs, and then it just took off. But then you have NFTs where people were generating digital art based on AI if you don't even know, and then they were selling them for tens of thousands of dollars. And so it just it's very walking the line as far as creativity, like what is considered now creativity, because it's not like before. It's not a Picasso where you're taking a painting. You're literally just kind of like what you created was awesome. I mean, that image that you created was like, holy cow, that's an awesome image for a blog or for whatever. But did you create that? How do you contribute to who created that based on the author? And so it really, yeah, it really comes down to is now you don't even know though when you create a content and you create something if that person even did it. And a lot of the stuff that I create on my LinkedIn or on my Instagram, just on posts on PMP, I don't create it. I mean, I have to put it through Canvan and I have to hit the download button. But otherwise, I mean, a lot of that was already AI created. So it just kind of throws us into that spinning web of understanding exactly who the genuine author is. And who have a comment right now. So AI is already creative in the fields, but the law needs to catch up to protect or recognize who holds the copyright to the final work. There was a story about an artist who created original work on Midjourney and used more than 600 prompts to tweak the work and won some kind of art competition, but the U.S. Patent Office would not recognize this copyright application to the work. And that actually comes back to almost, and when it comes to software development, if you're using third-party API in a software construct, for an application, they're not gonna patent it because it's not genuine work. It's not your original coding, because all you're using is third-party APIs to generate something that is already available and it's open source. So I guess in a way that you could kind of look at AI in the same construct. So John, I'm going to open it up to you and get your comments here.
Yeah, I think the only way you can truly get to a point where you can say, okay, AI can use XYZ creative stuff that's already been built, whether it's art or music or anything like that, is to be able to lock it down to Creative Commons. I don't know how that you would go about doing that because, as we've said, it's already been trained on a ton of data and a ton of images and a ton of sounds and different things. So I think that would be the only way to truly be able to say, okay, you can use this AI generated picture because it's only pulling from Creative Commons pool of data. And then the other thing I'll say is I look at it a lot from the lens of fan art. So you see a lot of people that do fan art, even like the Star Wars franchise. They have a whole animated series that's created by other people who aren't part of Disney and Star Wars, who I guess submitted these different animations for this little show that they kind of put together. And so from the AI perspective, I look at it as a lot like fan art. Like, you're not going to go out and sue somebody for creating a short story that sounds similar to Lord of the Rings. I mean, if it's fan art, it's fan art. That's actually a thing. People write short stories, people do graphics and artwork, people create short animations and things like that based off of an actual proprietary, piece of media. So it's a really thin line to balance on. Yeah. And is it truly creative? I don't think it's ever going to be truly creative. I think it's always going to be a tool like a paintbrush or anything like that that we use, and we use hand in hand with our own creativity to build something better.
Yep. And I think like I said, and it kind of circles back to the whole conversation of AI in general, and where we're heading is just how do we embrace it? How do we possibly regulate it? But then also how do we use it in any environment that we have? And we'll move on to, so we were supposed to have Brenda, but unfortunately she was her child was sick, so she wasn't able to jump on. But we'll kind of open it up for this, and now just kind of had talking points about AI when it comes to full self-driving. So just, a little bit of backdrop. I've been on full self-driving for over a year now with Tesla. I pay the extra. I didn't pay the $15,000. I pay $200 extra a month for all the features that come with full self-driving. And I've been on it. I have about probably I would say every quarter I have an update, and every update is something different. It's pretty interesting to see. But I guess kind of want to get your guys' perspective just based on where we are heading when it comes to automated driving. I mean, now even like Toyota, all these other companies, they do have, smart cruise control. But I think at a point in time, I think everyone's going to start embracing AI of what Tesla's doing in their technology. And unfortunately, they own it right now. I mean, NVIDIA pretty much has gone all on board with the cameras that they've provided. So with Teslas, you have a front, four sides, and then one back camera. And what it's using, as I was mentioning to Michael in the beginning, and John, is that we're about to move into full self-driving version 12, which is going to be video-based algorithm. Currently, right now, it's all code-based. So there's a lot of things that happen. So case in point, like right now at this stop sign, it will stop kind of sometimes early, looking at a hill traffic in this situation where I had to kind of creep forward. The car has to creep forward, in order to clear the hill. But based on the video algorithm, is supposed to be able to change that, where it can be able to pretty much smooth transition through a stop sign with knowing that traffic is not coming over the hill. But I've been highly impressed by the full self-driving, and even my friend that wrote in it, one of the things that he mentioned was that eventually I think we're going to get to the point where vehicles are going to be 100% autonomous, just like off of Demolition Man, where we are at the point of being able to get in our vehicle, drive anywhere, and it just drives us. But I kind of want to get your guys' opinion on where you think we're heading in the automotive industry. I know we don't have a slide deck, kind of more just talking points of where we think we're going. So Mike, if you want to take the lead first, and then we'll just we'll go around the horn.
Sure. I mean, so I haven't actually, full disclosure, I haven't actually driven a Tesla before or used full self-driving in any capability. It is an incredible technology. And I mean, I believe, was it Mercedes that has actually gotten clearance to do full level 3 self-driving? There are those that are actually being highly competitive, if not leapfrogging Tesla. Now, granted, Tesla has an advantage in terms of data, and data is very important for training these algorithms in AI. It's coming. It's just how long will it take? And the other thing we have to figure out is, when do we start trusting it fully? It doesn't need to be better. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be better than humans at driving. And humans are notoriously unreliable. So we have to really determine certain thresholds. It's kind of, in AI, I feel like there's a constant shifting of goalposts, right? There is the Turing test. And if you look at the original qualifications of what a Turing test entails, we passed that years ago. But nowadays, what does that mean? What does it mean for an AI to be as good as, if not better than humans? I think we're getting awfully close, but it's very hard until we have set defined criteria. I would love to see some sort of video or something where you have a Tesla with full self-driving try to take like a driver's test, doing all the necessary skills with parallel parking and everything to see, could it get a driver's license? Where does it exist within the spectrum of capabilities? It's inevitable. We're a very car dependent country, and this is technology that is very positive because there's a lot of people that don't have the capability to drive. So from like a disability and accessibility perspective, this is great equalizer if we can get it across to everywhere. But when will that happen, and how long is it going to take? I think that there's a process there, and I think there's a lot of bias against AI, and it's going to be a while till we can overcome all of that.
Yeah, and I think the national highway safety, every time there's some incident that has happened, unfortunately with Teslas, the blame is, of course, full self-driving and autonomous driving, to the point where they almost want to, you know, pretty much bring back that technology. And I mean, so Tesla right now, they consider themselves level 2, which in a way I feel like they are level 3, because even though I have to be attentive, I can't have my phone in front of me, on because I has it indoor in dash cam. So if I'm on my phone, it will tell me pretty much, please pay attention to the road. And if I get 3 strikes no, 5 strikes, I get suspended for a week. It used to be a month and a half. It used to be a very long time. And so it does have its security measurements. There was a guy in San Francisco that kind of caused the in-dash cam to happen, where he was sitting in the back seat of his Tesla, and it ended up causing a huge, national news. And Elon Musk had to come on board and pretty much say, hey, we need to stop this. And the guy ended up getting his car impounded, and then bought another one the next day and did the same thing. And then it pretty much caused Tesla to kind of like pump the brakes. Cause I remember one time going through Houston, and I was joking with my brother. This was like 2019, when Teslas were still just kind of getting out, and they only had autopilot at that point. And I was like, telling my brother, I was like, we were passing this Model X. I was like, watch, I bet this guy's on his cell phone. And literally, no kidding, the guy was just texting on his cell phone, just driving, on I-10 or I-10 going east. But it's just, it's amazing that for me, like I said, I've been on full self-driving for over a year now, and I can't complain. I go to PT in the morning with it. I drink my coffee, and I'm just relaxed. And it's great because it allows me to think about other things without really having to think about driving. And I think that's where we need to, as a society, get to that point where we're taking the human error out of the driving, because nowadays kids are so focused on the next instant gratification of being on their phone, sending text messages. And I mean, a lot of the accidents that you're having now are text message based. I would love to be able to see, a statistic between drunk driving and text message, crashes, and how, fatalities have happened because of that. But overall, like I said, it takes away the human error that we all know that exists on the roads now. So I'll turn it over to John, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give you some homework. You should go ahead and put that into Chat GPT about those statistics real quick and find out. I will throw one thing in there, and I don't think really for me, like the AI, I've driven the not self-driving, but the automated. And I actually drove on the Autobahn. It was a regular Tesla, and doing like 150, 180, 190 Ks on the Autobahn without touching the steering wheel, and watching that work was so super impressive to me. I might actually have some video of it. I might send it over to you. But yeah, I think the technology is really, really there, or at least on the cusp of being there. I would venture to say that a company like Mercedes, by virtue of being in Germany, where their infrastructure of their roads, everything is standardized, like they have a really, really good, not only road system, but transportation system in general, just public transportation, right? So I really don't think it's a technology shift that's going to take us over the hill of this automated driving. I think it's more of an infrastructure shift. Like, we haven't rebuilt our roads and probably we built the highway system, 50, 60 years ago, and it hasn't really changed since then. So the same with electricity, we're still using power lines above the ground. It's antiquated technology in and of itself. So I think if there's a way to create a better infrastructure system specifically for self-driving vehicles, where it's almost a side-by-side kind of parallel infrastructure, I think you would solve a whole lot of those problems, because we're thinking of it from the perspective of, oh yeah, we're driving down the neighborhood and then there's people on the street, whatever. Like, I think if you take the sidewalks and put them somewhere else, or just reroute the traffic in some other way, create underground tunnels to drive through. I don't know what that actually looks like, but I think the infrastructure would really take us over the top, and it would really create a way safer environment because you can actually control that environment from the beginning.
Yeah, I know that Tesla's done the tunnels in Vegas and a couple other places, but yeah, there's, you know, when we look at it, we think about the Jetsons and we think about Demolition Man and where we thought we would be in 2020, 2023, 2025, and we're not even there nearly as much as I think we thought we would be. But I think we're advancing. I mean, we're advancing a lot faster than what we imagined. Certainly, when it comes to the AI conversation of where we're at, and that brings me back to, the closing comments of what Sam Altman said was that if you asked him 5 years ago when he started the OpenAI project, where would it be, and he said, I'd never thought it would be where we are at currently right now. Certainly with ChatGPT and the milestones that they've made to pretty much wake up a sleeping giant. Now that you have Microsoft, Google, Amazon Web, Amazon, pretty much all of them are using AI in their industries. And I think that it's kind of moving mountains when it comes to how we as a society embrace it, whether for the good or the bad. And so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We've been over an hour here, but I appreciate guys. I'm going to be creating like little video clips. Probably John will be doing the same. So that way, if you guys can drop your LinkedIn bio in the chat group, so that way people can connect with you. That's the whole purpose of this Social Saturday Mixer. But I appreciate both of you joining us. It was unfortunate that Brenda wasn't able to join us because of her kid. I was looking forward to what she's doing as a technical recruiter and using AI to help with her pretty much job placements with using AI. But yeah, if you guys have any closing comments.
I mean, as far as AI goes, keep looking towards the future. It's going to get better, and that could mean amazing things, and that could mean terrible things. So look forward to it all.
Yep. And John, for you?
Yeah, I'll just drop one nice little nugget out there for everybody. And I don't know if you've read it or not, but there's a book called Out of Control by Kevin Kelly. It was written and published back in 94, 95. If you really want to get kind of a grasp on technology as a whole, any kind of technologies that we're using now that are coming to fruition now, like he was talking about it back then in the early 90s. So it's a great read. It gives you a lot of really good information about tech, about AI stuff, about autonomous vehicles and things of that nature. All of that's wrapped up in that book, and it's a super
yeah, if you can leave that, if you can link that of where it could be purchased, I think that'd be interesting to be able to look into and leave that in the comments there. So okay, guys, I appreciate Michael. It was nice meeting you, and I'm glad that we were able to connect and get you on board. I really appreciated your insight, certainly from where you're at in your current line of work. And then John, of course, I appreciate this is your second Saturday on here with me, and it's always a great conversation to have with you. And for everybody that was able to stay on board, I know we were going pretty late, but otherwise, next week or next Saturday, I'm going to try to have Aerial Resupply CEO on to just talk his transition out of the military, but then he's also started his own coffee company where he finally just sold his first bag on Amazon. So we're going to mix it up a little bit. Last week we talked a little bit of tech and transition. This week was AI. And then next Saturday, I'll try to get on the Aerial Resupply CEO and just talk about how he's doing what he's doing right now in the business world, but then also what he did. He was prior enlisted to officer and then got out. So I appreciate you guys being on, and hope everyone has a good day. All right. Take care, guys.
Good
Thanks,
one.
man.